Welcome back to The Vocalist. Today we are listening to the Norwegian singer Sissel. She has been on my list for years now, so we are finally going to watch a live performance of the song Slow Down. Here we go.
In the midst of my confusion, in the time of desperate need, when I'm thinking not too clearly, a gentle voice does intercede. Slow down, be still. Be still and wait on the Spirit of the Lord. Slow down and hear His voice and know that He is God.
Oh my gosh. This is so gorgeous. I have goosebumps. Let's go back. There's so much to talk about. I mean, her registration is just so good. Like where she puts every single note just feels like perfection. Her phrasing, another thing. Her breath control, another thing. So we're gonna dig into it. I did read briefly that she obviously she's a soprano, but it mentioned like a crossover artist. So I'm curious. That term crossover can be used in a lot of different ways, and so I'm curious if it's considered crossover because this is her core sound always, and she just goes between different styles of music. So some might lean more classical and others might lean more contemporary, or sometimes crossover can also mean varying techniques a little bit vocally. So maybe she has sung opera and this is considered more contemporary for her. You guys will have to let me know so that I can explore more of her repertoire. But back to the beginning. Here we go.
In the midst of my confusion.
Let's talk about onsets. There are variations to this, but usually there are 3 main onsets that we hear from singers. And an onset is the very beginning of a line. I've talked a lot about glottal onsets, so we get this nice firm press in the chords. The other side of that is when we use air. So we get, which we're hearing in this particular opening. And then we get one that's a little bit more in between so that you hear less of the air, but it's not quite a glottal. It's so smart to use air in this way because she's creating this gorgeous effect and really setting the stage for this entire song. If she had started with more press, or if she had started even like a little bit more in the middle between the glottal and that airy sound, there would naturally be more presence in her sound. We would hear more of her tone, and so then she would have to back off the volume. But by using this air, it's giving that lighter effect, and it's also preventing her chords from firmly pressing together. So it's a nice way of achieving a lighter, well, a lower dynamic volume without having to change your breath pressure as much. Oh, let me get that again.
In the midst of my confusion, in the time of desperate need.
So here we're in a mix, and it's a mix because of where she is in her range, but also the variation in sound. You can hear that press, but it's high enough so that we're in that mix range. It's not solely chest voice. We needed some stretch in the chords in order to get these higher pitches, but it's not airy like it was before, where previously in a similar range, I would say that was more head dominant because we weren't getting that TA engagement like we are here. Let me play that again. She pulls a little further forward to achieve this particular sound without amplifying it. And so just ever so delicately, we're getting a little bit more nasality, a little bit more forward placement, so that it stays refined, it stays elegant, and it matches everything previously, except she's giving us a new color, and I love that.
In the midst of my confusion, in the time of desperate need, when I'm thinking not too clearly.
What a beautiful vibrato. I don't know how this is going to progress. It's almost like a flutter. It's so, there's a youthfulness to it, which obviously matches this gorgeous tone she has. And it's just the slightest effect, and it's not, a wide vibrato that's taking over the sound by any means. It's just adding a little shimmer.
A gentle voice does intercede.
The one other thing I wanted to say with this particular, lack of press in her chords, it really does take a lot of dexterity to keep that airflow significant enough that we're getting this airiness, but she's still creating tone. If you imagine, there are the main two variables when we are making sound. Yes, we've got resonators, and there's a lot that goes into the final product that we hear. But as far as what's happening in the larynx, the chords are coming together and coming apart, and we have air going through the chords in order to make that sound. And so when you have too much air, sometimes that blows the chords apart more than you want, and that's when we get gaps in sound. And if you have too much muscle, then we get the chords pressed together, perhaps more than we want, and that amplifies sound, and it creates a completely different type of sound, that more pressed, present sound. So for her to maintain just this gorgeous air pressure, consistent air pressure, while also keeping her chords just like the perfect degree apart so that air can flow, there's so much consistency in this sound, and I think it takes a lot of dexterity and understanding of your instrument in order to maintain that when it's so light. And it's gorgeous. It's just ethereal.
A us intercede. Slow down, be still. Be still and wait.
That's just a very small fraction of the phrasing I was talking about. The fact that she didn't take a breath after that extended be still, there was like this hesitation, this gorgeous pause, and then she finished the line, but there was no breath interrupting that line.
On the Spirit of the Lord. Slow down.
Actually, that's a really good example. You can hear how there's more TA engagement here, but it's head dominant. And that's when you start to hear those slightly more like Western classical operatic sounds. In order for, especially in like a woman's voice, in order to get that kind of presence, you do need muscle behind that. But it doesn't have to sound like chest voice. You know, it can sound like head voice with a lot more strength. And we're getting just a tiny bit of that here. I don't know if I backed it up enough.
On the Spirit
Here.
of the Lord.
It's almost like there was a slight shift moving from something that was more chest dominant into something more head dominant.
On the Spirit of the Lord. Slow down and hear His voice and know that He is God.
I know we have a long way to go. Something I want to point out, this way of singing is kind of its own entity. When you think about muscle engagement, we all sort of get not stuck. Maybe we get comfortable in a certain way of producing sound. And for a lot of us, chest voice comes easily because as we speak to one another, we are in chest voice. We're in a nice, lower, comfortable range, and we're primarily using that TA muscle. So we get nice presence and, I don't know, a bit of oomph in our sound. This particular technique is super challenging for all the reasons I mentioned, but also stamina. I'm speaking from my own experience. I was not trained to maintain such soft dynamic levels for such long durations. And so when I'm playing around with these sounds in my own practice, I experience fatigue much faster than when I'm using more muscle engagement. And obviously, this is, at least to my understanding, I'm assuming this is kind of part of her signature sound, so she has built up that stamina. But I like to point that out because for people who want to just, cover a song, maybe one song you'll feel fine, but if you try to do that for an entire concert, if you try and sing with a lot of airiness and breathiness and you don't have the dexterity built up, that stamina like secure, it can be tiring and not fun. So we do things in steps, we do things gradually, we take our time to build that strength so that we don't experience fatigue and you can continue singing in the way that feels most authentic to you as an artist.
In the time of tribulation, when I'm feeling so unsure, when things are pressing in about me, comes a gentle voice, so still, so pure.
Her interpretation is so captivating, and I think one of the reasons I like it is that a lot of times in music, when we hear themes of frustration, themes of stress or hurt, or just anything like overwhelm, which it seems like is part of this song, music is often written with not necessarily a harshness, but more intensity. And I like that there is a level, I don't know, it's still very gentle. And I just like this interpretation because I think it speaks to some people who, you know, when they get frustrated, when they get overwhelmed, they don't shout, they don't yell, they might sort of retreat into themselves but still feel that kind of stress. And it's not often that you see that reflected in, at least it's not often that I have seen that reflected in music, or maybe I just haven't heard the right music yet. And so this is just a really beautiful interpretation, and I think probably, well, I don't know if it resonates with a lot of people, but I definitely think it represents a lot of people.
Still and wait.
Okay, we're going back. Let me just get that end. I didn't mention this arrangement before, but I mean, just that delicate opening with the string, or was it the harp? Oh golly, I'll have to watch it again. I think it was harp at the opening. And just, yeah, the orchestra just playing so beautifully, so lightly. And obviously it's a very minimal, like, orchestral writing, so there isn't a lot going on. The way she blended so beautifully when the choir came in, even though she didn't need to. Like, she's obviously out front, she's the soloist, but I like that she made an effort, again, to not have a really distinct vibrato. It was all very gentle. And then, of course, at the end here, she also did one of my favorite things, which I've talked about so many times on the channel. When it comes to hyperextending the jaw, this was such a beautiful example showing you don't have to do that on those high notes. Yes, there are some high notes where it's a little bit, it helps, but for the most part, like, you can do so much with your articulators, with the space that you have in your mouth, with your resonators, lifting the soft palate and enjoying like backspace, like open pharyngeal space. There's just so much you can do and not need to engage like your lips or, shift the shape of the vocal tract using facial muscles. I think I have to go back even further. Here we go. That was such a beautiful performance. I imagine it was probably really satisfying for her at the end to be able to sing some higher notes, especially as a soprano. And there was so much clarity in those tones. They just rung out so beautifully. Yeah. I think I just really enjoyed how, I don't know, it felt almost deconstructed. Like there was so much simplicity and, I don't know, maybe even a little bit of minimalism in there, just because what struck me most was just her voice, which helped me follow along with the text and really hear everything she was singing. And there were just, that one moment at the end where the choir came in was gorgeous, and then throughout I feel like the orchestra just supported her so beautifully. So this, I don't know, it just put a smile on my face. It was a really gorgeous performance. So that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for this recommendation and for watching with me, and hopefully I will see you next time.